Discretion is advised. Early on a Tuesday morning, housekeeper Juanita Avitia arrives at the home of Dale and Glee Yule.
As I opened the door, stepped in, the kitchen sliding door was closed, and that door is never closed. It's always open.
Right away, she saw that something was wrong, terribly wrong.
As I looked into the kitchen, I saw the daughter, Tiffany. She had a puddle of blood underneath her, and there was no movement.
Frantic, the housekeeper races to the neighbors. They call 911. When emergency personnel arrive, they're shocked to find 2 more bodies. Tiffany's parents, Dale and Glee Yule.
Having a triple homicide in Fresno is not the norm. I mean, that's unheard of.
They were rich, they were successful, and this was Easter Sunday out of the blue.
Somebody was taking out this family for a reason.
But that reason would take years to discover.
This case was really like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle.
Two days after Easter, Fresno County detectives examine the bodies of 3 victims: 59-year-old Dale Yule, his 57-year-old wife Glee, and their 24-year-old daughter Tiffany.
There's a little dining room off the kitchen, and Tiffany's body was lying on the floor there. She was face down with her hands underneath her.
And there was a pool of dried blood around her head. To us, it indicated that she'd been there for quite some time.
Further east, through the dining room, there's a hallway that goes towards the garage, and that's where Dale Yule's body was found.
We had dried blood again. He was face down on the floor, and mail spread all around him, as if he just was walking down the hallway with mail, got shot in the back of the head, and fell. Died immediately.
Glee Yule's body lies on the floor in the home office.
She was on her side, almost in a fetal position, and she'd been shot numerous times.
Her arm and hand, with the car key still in it, was draped over her face, which tells me that she was trying to fend off the barrel of the gun when the person was standing above her and ready to shoot her.
I wouldn't think of anybody wanting to harm them. Just very scary, you know.
Detectives first suspect the Yules came home and stumbled upon a burglar.
I've never seen a house ransacked that thoroughly.
There were drawers that had been opened. There were the closets, ransacked, things on the floor, clothing.
There was property, firearms, jewelry lying around.
But a closer examination suggests 2 possibilities: either an inexperienced burglar or a staged crime scene.
A person that burglarizes houses that starts looking, say, at drawers, he starts from the bottom and he comes up, because you never have to close a drawer that way. And so the whole dresser is left open. Where here you had different varieties. Some was closed and some was partially open, some was wide open. It was like someone randomly did this.
Mrs. Yule did have an expensive watch on, and she also had her purse and a wallet.
I'm thinking, well, 15-year-old kid, because that's what it looked like a juveniles would do. But now juveniles wouldn't be, you wouldn't think, be capable of killing 3 people.
The crime scene is combed for clues.
We were fingerprinting, photographing, collecting everything, and we weren't finding much.
There were no shell casings anywhere. We just figured it might be somebody who just picked up the shell casings and left.
The bullets are collected for later analysis. Police also discover that a gun is missing.
Mr. Yule was a gun enthusiast. We found several firearms lying on the master bed. In addition to that, we found a manufacturer's box for a handgun, but there was no handgun inside.
It would give the average person an impression that someone got the gun, loaded it, and killed a family with it.
The search of the home's exterior fails to locate the killer's point of entry.
We examined every window, every door, every lock, inside and out. Got a ladder, we went up on the roof, looked in, there was 2 skylights in the home. The skylights were intact.
There's no signs of forced entry anywhere in the house.
The housekeeper confirms the Yules always kept the alarm set.
Every time we went, we had to turn it off, and we had to turn it back on when we left.
We did some tests on the system. It was working fine. We checked with the local power company, no outages in the area that weekend. So that was real perplexing.
Somebody obviously had a key and knew an alarm code or knew how to get in there by bypassing that stuff.
Officers canvassed the neighborhood.
The neighbors hadn't heard a thing. There were no calls about shots fired. There was no calls about a disturbance or strange vehicles in the area, nothing at all.
Neighbors tell police about a 4th member of the family. 21-year-old Dana Yule attends the University of Santa Clara, 2 hours away.
Dana was not killed because he was having Easter dinner with his girlfriend's family.
Well, I was shocked. We rallied around Dana, concerned about this poor guy who had just lost his whole family. We were at my brother's house trying to gather and make sense of all this and wait to see what happened.
Danny didn't have a clue. He didn't know why anybody would want to hurt his family.
Dana last saw his family over the weekend at their beach house.
Dana's girlfriend and her girlfriend's parents had come down, so this was the time for Dana's parents to meet his girlfriend's parents. And apparently they had a really nice weekend and everything was great.
Investigators widen their search. They contact Dale Yule's brothers.
Dale was sort of a self-made man, very dedicated, personable, loved his family. They're very close.
Dale sold airplanes, and he was brilliant at selling airplanes because he would fly them out to these big, multi-thousand-acre ranches in and around Fresno County and land them on the farmer's land, no appointment or anything, just land them. They'd come out to see what was going on. He'd take them up in it for an airplane ride, and by the end of the day, he'd sold them a plane.
The family lived quietly and was well liked in the community.
Lee was a beautiful person. She was the type of person everybody loved.
She was one of the most well-liked people I've ever met. She was always had a smile. She was always friendly. She was always there for you. She's the kind of person, if you saw her at an event, you'd get a card or a note a week later, great to see you last week, and she was just that kind of a person.
Tiffany was a sweetheart. She's very shy. She was going to some graduate classes at Fresno State, living at home when this happened.
Investigators establish a timeline of events. On Sunday afternoon, Glee and Tiffany left their beach house and drove back to Fresno. A short time later, Dale flew back in his private plane.
What we felt happened was that Glee and Tiffany had pulled into the driveway, into the garage, gotten out, came through the house.
As she entered into the kitchen, the shooter was probably standing in the family room, out of her sight, and shot her in the back of the head as she came around the corner.
We think that Glee was right behind her and saw what had happened and turned to run.
She must have been in such terrible fear. She must have been just fearful and running for her life, and that the killer absolutely was determined not to let her get away.
Dale Ewell came home an estimated 30 to 45 minutes later.
Dale had flown his plane back to Fresno, did some work at the office, then he came home, and he was shot immediately as he walked in the door.
That was very concerning. Why would somebody, if it was just a residential burglary and the residents came home and you got in a confrontation with them, at the end of the confrontation, you would leave, you would run, you would flee. Why would you wait around for the third family member to come home and kill them as well?
Somebody was taking out this family for a reason.
While detectives wait for the ballistics reports on the bullets, investigators review the evidence. 3 dead family members. A staged burglary. No signs of forced entry. And a disabled alarm system.
We had no fingerprints, no witnesses, no one reporting any suspicious activity. We virtually had no evidence.
What detectives need is a suspect with a motive, and they're about to get some help from an unlikely source. On Easter Sunday, 1992, a killer methodically guns down Dale and Glee Ewell and their 24-year-old daughter, Tiffany.
It was just so cold and brutal. I'll just never forget seeing Tiffany lying down, and her blonde hair and a puddle of blood around her.
How anybody could do that to someone, it's just beyond me.
I was stunned. My brother's secretary met me, said, well, we got to go to your brother's house. There's been an accident.
It appeared to be a purposeful killing of a whole family. Very unusual in the world of murder.
We just came to one conclusion, that this was an inside job.
Searching for a motive, investigators interview Dale Ewell's business associates.
Apparently he was pretty hard-knuckled, and so there were some people that weren't happy with him because of his business practices.
He was known as an honest, strong businessman. He expected people to do what they promised. Some employees claim that they were dissatisfied, but he paid well. And he was very demanding.
There were a lot of people who had to be looked at to see if somebody wanted him killed.
One by one, suspects are eliminated. Everyone with a possible motive also has an alibi.
We knew we were looking at around 5 o'clock on Sunday, so we could kind of narrow down the period of alibi. So we eliminated all those pretty much by all interviews.
We also were doing a background on Mrs. Yule, maybe something in her background. Somebody was upset with her.
Lee was on the Board of Governors of the State Bar of California. Board of Governors oversees all the actions of the attorneys in California, everywhere from administering the bar exam to disciplining attorneys. There are threats, and there has been some very minor violence, but no, I don't think that somebody would go after her in particular.
The background check uncovers a surprise. Glee Yule had worked for the CIA.
You don't know if maybe they were still working for the CIA, you know, and maybe yes, whatever she was working on maybe is what happened to him.
Glee left the CIA in the early 1960s, and her work there was routine.
She was a translator, no real spy work, no enemies, and plus she was so loved by everybody.
We also looked at Tiffany. She was a student there in Fresno State, and perhaps she had a boyfriend that was upset with her.
Tiffany was a sweetheart of a young lady, very intelligent, no known boyfriends. She was kind of on a more recluse side, not outgoing type person.
Detectives ask Dana Yule for help. They walk him through the crime scene, hoping he can spot some clues.
When we walk them through this and have him point out what's missing from the house, because we don't know what's missing from the house.
When we escorted Dana to the master bedroom and we pointed out that there were firearms laying there, he asked us if we had found the gun that was associated with that manufacturer's box, and of course we hadn't.
The missing gun is a Browning 9mm pistol. Ballistic tests confirm all 3 victims were killed with a 9mm weapon. The tests also show the bullets have unusual markings called striations, formed when ammunition is fired from a weapon.
Murder bullets had these striations, deep striations on the bullets, and those only could be caused by either a suppressor or a silencer or some sort that would cause something like this.
Who brings a silencer to a burglary? You know, only a professional would do that. Just looks like an absolute setup. Somebody went in there prepared.
Detectives reassess their clues. The killer entered without tripping the alarm, waited patiently for everyone to come home, and used a silencer.
The length of the investigation kept going on, and that concerned us that let's get something going here. Time is our enemy, we figured, in this whole process.
As detectives search for some kind of hard evidence, they finally get a break. A very clever killer makes a clumsy mistake. After the murder of his parents and sister, Dana Yule posts a $25,000 reward.
Initial reaction was shock, fear, and outrage. Glee was well known, Tiffany was well liked, Dale was well known. They were rich, they were successful, and this was Easter Sunday out of the blue.
With still no arrest, Dana doubles the reward to $50,000. Then, a stunning shift in the case.
We're reading the will because we're trying to find out burial arrangements. Well, it turned out there was no burial arrangements in the will. So Dana said, well, what about the money?
Dana learned that he would inherit, but not until years later, not until he was 35, that the money would be in a trust.
Well, Dana went ballistic. He jumped out of his chair and slammed down his fist. Why would my dad do a thing like that? Well, you know, I was shocked. At first, it's one of those things when you hear it, so I didn't hear that, did I?
Everybody in the room just sort of looked at each other. It was like, why is that the reaction? I mean, when your family's just been murdered.
I said, that kid is dirty as the day is long. You know, they're worth, what, $8 million, give or take, and, you know, where's all this money going to go to? Well, it's obviously going to go to the kid.
In fact, Dana has an airtight alibi.
Dana would have been up in the Bay Area where he was going to school at Santa Clara. And he was with his girlfriend, and they were absolutely, positively there at the time of the murder.
Dana had a very valid alibi that actually we didn't even question.
Dana had never shown any signs of violence or anger.
There really wasn't any evidence that he disliked his sister or that he disliked his mother at all. There was some contention between he and his father sometimes, but probably nothing more than would happen between most sons and fathers.
But Dana's childhood does provide insight into his material influences.
From a very early age, he was very consumed with money, very greedy, very consumed with appearances.
In high school, Dana often dressed in expensive suits and carried a briefcase.
He acted as if he was very wealthy. He would flaunt the money. Dana was known to buy expensive bottles of perfume for girls at the high school and to regularly flash $100 bills.
This one friend of his in high school said he had never met a person who was so enamored and driven by money. He would go to a cafeteria, we were told, buy everybody hamburgers. He'd have parties and give everybody $100 bills.
Dana's father spoiled his son in other ways.
Dana Ewell had a small Mercedes, and he went over to the coast and he wrecked the car, and his father obtained an exact replica of that car, same color, same year, same interior, and actually took the blame for the accident so that Dana wouldn't have to tell people he was involved in the accident.
Dana's interviews with police reveal little.
How about you and your folks? Did you ever have any disagreement with your folks over basically what you wanted to do with your life?
They wanted me to go study in London in the fall. I was bored in school and I aced through my classes, and so I've been looking at job offers and stuff the past 2-3 years, and I have some for the fall in New York full time. That's where all the action is.
Is there anybody that would want your parents dead?
There's one of them dead. I don't know if I can take the specific people. my sister is the most harmless creature in the world. I don't think she's ever offended anybody. I mean, and my father, you know, he's a pretty calm person most of the time. Once in a while, he gets upset at somebody or like a lawsuit or employee. Just my mother's very political minded. She's in the state, was in the state bar board of governors, had a lot of political power.
I have a question. Did you have anything to do with your parents' death?
No.
Detectives conclude their interview without any firm leads or a confession. The investigation is expanded to include anyone close to the Yule family. One of Dana's friends at the University of Santa Clara stands out.
That investigation revealed an individual by the name of Joel Radisich. What we were finding out about Joel is that he was a student there, but he was having some problems. And it appeared that he had been kicked out of the dorm because he was stealing furniture.
He was described as a person he didn't want to follow in line to the lunch because he would literally pick up a handful of lettuce and smell it and throw it back in the bowl.
Detectives contact Joel at his mother's house in Los Angeles.
He wanted to know why we wanted to talk to him, and we told him, well, we understand you were good friends with Dana Yule, and his question was, well, what are you going to do, arrest me?
He downplayed his relationship with Dana Yule. By the way he described it, you would think they were more of acquaintances.
Joel is brought in for further questioning.
Have you ever been to Fresno? Yes, I have. Visit Dana or? Yeah. We picked up one of his cars. We switched his Mercedes for a Jeep. Did you go inside the house? Yes, I did.
Joel claims that on the day of the murders, he was working at an auto paint and body shop.
Watching TV, moving cars and the auto body.
What time did you get here on Easter?
I was there probably most of the day, around 12-ish.
You spent all day there?
Yeah.
But what time did you go home, or did you go home?
11.
We went to verify the alibi and got the opposite. The owner of the body shop, he doesn't recall Joel being there at all.
That was the time they started to think maybe this kid knows more than we think.
We decided we're going to re-interview Joel and obviously ask him some questions. Well, Joel was nowhere to be found.
Detectives do find a friend of Joel's who admits receiving a suspicious package prior to the murders.
Joel had asked him if he could use his name and his parents' address to send a box of books there.
And when he got this particular box, he just mistakenly opened it.
And the top book was on how to make a silencer.
Other books include topics on surveillance and spy methods.
And one of the things that was suggested was that if you kill somebody and you're asked any questions by law enforcement, the first thing you ask them is, are you going to arrest me?
I know a lot of people probably buy books like that, but I mean, here it just fits like a glove.
Detectives send the homemade silencer book to a Fresno County criminalist.
And so I told myself, I want you to build a silencer as what the book depicts. Exactly. Because we can't deviate from that.
And once he used this and fired rounds through a similar weapon with a similar barrel, we got the same striation marks as the rounds that were found at the murder scene. Everybody was ecstatic, but we just weren't quite there yet.
Joel Radovich is now a person of interest, and he's on the run. The question is, which way, and just how far will he go? Six months after the Yule family murders, one of Dana's friends, Joel Radovich, emerges as the prime suspect. But after his interview with detectives, Joel disappears. The search lasts for several weeks, until Joel turns up in a very unlikely location.
Joel Radovich showed up one day, suddenly, at the house over in Sunnyside.
Joel Radovich moved in with Dana Yule at the home where the murders occurred.
Now, we're saying to ourselves, Joel's saying that he was a casual friend of Dana. It's very strange that he shows up at Dana's house right after our interview.
Detectives assign undercover narcotics units to track Dana and Joel.
Dana was giving Joel money. We actually have photographs of them leaving the bank together, and getting in his Mercedes and driving off together.
Dana is also paying for Joel's helicopter lessons.
Why is Dana giving Joel Radovich $5,600 to learn how to fly a helicopter? I mean, that's pretty good money. We're all speculating why he did it, because he probably paying for the murder.
Who else? Who had insider information? Who stood to benefit? And why leave all the phony clues except for to point away from the obvious?
1 month later, the Fresno Bee mentions Joel and Dana as possible suspects.
It was a surprise, but as you started reading some of the reasons and the behavior of Dana, you start thinking maybe there is something here. I knew his attorney, and his attorney was pretty much telling the authorities as well as the press, put up or shut up. In effect, you know, if you have something, do something rather than suggesting or leaking all this information.
Joel immediately leaves town.
That's when they followed him back down to Los Angeles and killed him in L.A.
Dana stays in Fresno. The sheriff's department orders surveillance on both of them.
We had, at any given time, up in Santa Clara, probably anywhere from 6 to 12 detectives up there, and another 15 to 20 down in Southern California, just trying to watch these guys as they got on the phones.
Surveillances are only successful about 10% of the time. So you try to evaluate the people that you're surveilling to give you an idea what type that person was. With Dana, it was very difficult because Dana was constantly apparently looking in the mirror, making counter-surveillance driving type, which is making U-turns, going into parking lots, out of parking lots for no purpose other than to pick up a surveillance. It's easier with Joe because Joe was in a world of his own and was oblivious to, I believe, anybody around him.
The pair contact each other using a system of pagers and public payphones.
Who talks payphone to payphone? That's how Dana and Joel were communicating for a long period of time, which made it very clear that they were trying to hide something.
In a first for the Fresno Homicide Department, a judge permits the use of a cloned pager.
Detective Souza obtained a pager that was identical to the one that Joel Radovich was wearing. And so when Joel Radovich would get a page, Detective Souza would also get that page.
I didn't even know you could do a clone pager, but it made perfect sense.
The cloned pager sends out a signal whenever Dana wants to talk to Joel.
Joel would always go to a bank of 2 phones at a 7-Eleven, and he'd always use the phone on the left. Even if somebody was on it and nobody was on the one on the right, he would wait, and he'd go to the phone on the left.
He acted like he was oblivious to anybody around him. So we started sending undercover investigators up to the right phone.
Joel was overheard on the Southern California end. He says, I want to take a trip around the world. I want $25,000, I want it now. They were talking pretty regular, then it started to slow up. And I don't know if they were getting worried or just felt they should just lay low for a while.
That prompted us, well, how can we fire these guys up to start talking about the murder?
That spark comes in May 1993. 13 months after the murders, Detective Curtis visits Dana's dorm room at the University of Santa Clara.
And the door opens up, he goes, what are you doing here? You know you're not supposed to contact me, you're supposed to get me through my attorney and this and that.
Dana refuses to comment.
Dana started to shut the door. And just before he could, I said, by the way, we think Joel Radovich killed your family. And he stopped and he's looking and he's just white. He goes, okay, and he shut the door.
Minutes later, Dana races out the door to a payphone off campus. Down in Southern California, Joel's pager goes off.
Then that's when we started getting conversations about murder now. Be careful, we don't know how much evidence they hold.
Yeah, I gotta talk to my guy. They actually charge me something. The 3-shirt deal. I don't know how far that goes.
Joel referred to that 3-shirt deal, which we believe was referring to the 3 murders.
But after 2 years of surveillance, investigators still have only circumstantial evidence.
We need the gun, we need the rounds, we need anything we can to tie him to the murder.
We're dead in the water, things are getting cold, nothing's happening.
Then, in a conversation in June 1993, an undercover officer overhears Joel ordering something strange.
He is talking on the phone and they're overhearing him buying something for $431 and some cents. They don't know what he's buying or nothing.
The call is traced to an 800 number.
I called the 800 number and pretty much asked them, what do you sell for $431? And it's just a clearing type house. And they said the electronic lockpick.
Detectives wonder if Radovich is planning a break-in.
I asked, where is it being sent? And that's when we discovered Jack Ponce.
Jack Ponce. He had grown up and gone to elementary school with Joel.
Ponce confirms the receipt of the lockpick, but beyond that, he won't talk.
I think we interviewed him at least 5 times before we started getting anywhere. It was like pulling teeth trying to get information out of this kid.
Finally, I just got frustrated interviewing him. And I just come right out and said, have you ever owned a 9mm weapon? And he about falls out of the chair, and then he catches composure and he goes, yes.
Ponce admits purchasing an AT-9 assault rifle.
We asked him why he bought the gun. To shoot possums in his mom's house in the attic. I said, that makes holes in the roof, you know.
Conveniently, he had reported it stolen to LAPD. It got stolen out of his car at UCLA.
So we knew it was bull. But the big thrill about the whole thing was we had now information of a gun he purchased. He showed me the receipt.
In another stunning development, the receipt shows Ponce bought the gun just 11 days before the Ewell family murders.
We knew we had a gun, we knew we had a guys.
But there's still a problem. There's no evidence proving Ponce gave the gun to either Joel or Dana.
What we have a three-cornered activity. We have an activity between Dana and Joel Radizich, and Joel Radizich and Jack Ponce.
Investigators establish a timeline of all their evidence.
What we did is we got a big roll of butcher paper and a whole bunch of colored markers, and we secluded ourselves at a hotel conference room for 3-4 days.
Every piece of information is written down.
The financial activities, the clone, phone records, the surveillance, what was heard, the whole thing. So that was a way we could tell the story in some type of sequence.
The timeline gave you the ability to visualize the entirety of the case.
What stood out was just the volume of small pieces of evidence, one after another, all of which pointed toward Dana Ewell and Joel Radizich.
I was predicting that we need to get a warrant for Ponce's arrest because I felt he was going to roll.
But one false move could blow the investigation. Detective Souza is out on a limb. If his hunch is wrong, 3 years of work could go up in smoke. Get more solved online. On March 2nd, 1995, 3 years after the triple murder, arrest warrants are issued for Jack Ponce, Joel Radizich, and Dana Ewell.
I was at a conference in Long Beach, and I received a call from my wife saying, "You won't believe it, but there's an all-points bulletin out. I just heard it on the news for Dana." It turns out that in the hotel in Long Beach was Dana's attorney, so I went downstairs and advised him. He was surprised because he thought that he had a deal with the authorities that he would turn him in if there was any type of an arrest warrant.
I hate to use the term glad, but we were pleased they got to that point. Everything we had seen and known, he had to be connected. Justice was finally starting.
It was a huge story in Fresno. Fresno's got several TV stations and the newspaper, and it was the lead story everywhere for days.
We were very shocked because to us it seemed like they were a very close family. We couldn't believe it, that he was being accused of it.
While their circumstantial case is strong, investigators are hoping Jack Ponce will confess.
We knew that Dana would not, and we knew that Joel would not. And Jack probably had the most to lose with the least involvement in what had happened.
We arrested him at the restaurant where he was working. He was talked to that night, and he wouldn't say a thing.
But the next day, on the long ride to Fresno, Jack cracks.
He talked in the car, and then he talked when he got back, and then he talked when I got there.
He told them way more than we ever thought he was going to tell them.
Jack admits buying the AT-9 assault rifle for Joel.
The static, I mean, this thing is coming together, finally, in a long time, 3 years.
Jack says he met up with Joel several weeks later.
Joel had contacted him in a frantic. They drove to Malibu Beach, and Joel proceeds to tell him how he killed his family.
Step by step, Jack Ponce tells detectives what Joel had told him.
Joel told Jack that he committed the murders by completely shaving his body of any hair so that he wouldn't leave any trace evidence.
And he had a piece of plastic down so he wouldn't leave anything. And he sit on this plastic in the washroom of the house until the car drives in.
Joel moves into the living room. Then, as Tiffany walks by, Joel shoots her in the back of the head.
Joel tells Jack that he went around into the small hallway, and he's face to face with Glee, Gil, the mom. She turns and takes off running. He runs after her, and he shoots her. Then he says that he had to make sure she was dead. So that's when he stood right above her and shot her in the face and the heart.
Joel waits for Dana's father.
And waited for him to walk by his door, and he stepped out and he shot him in the back of the head.
Afterwards, Joel ransacks the house to make it look like a robbery before leaving.
Joel also told Jack that he used 9mm ammunition that was from inside the Ewell house that he knew was going to be there.
Joel gave a bag of gun parts, including the AT-9 and the 9mm from the home, gave them to Jack Ponce to get rid of. And Jack said he would.
Is it still there now? Do you know where it is now?
Jack agrees to help police search for the missing gun parts.
Every single piece of that gun was discarded and never found, except for the murder barrel.
And getting that barrel was a sin from God. I wouldn't give you a plug nickel the chance of getting that barrel at the start of this investigation. And here it is, it's buried in ground for 3 years in an open lot in Los Angeles.
Jack Ponce agrees to testify for the prosecution, in exchange for immunity.
It wasn't very difficult for me to make him a deal. She certainly was an accessory after the fact to murder, but I think it defies reason to think that he was actually involved in the homicide or the planning for the homicide.
On December 16th, 1997, Joel and Dana stand trial, charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder.
I felt a lot of pressure. I always had a reputation when I was a prosecutor of being kind of a laid-back, but that was hardly my persona during the Ewell trial.
The initial impression was how could somebody kill their own parents? It's not possible. Something's got to be wrong here. And I think everybody felt that way.
Prosecutors stress Dana Ewell's motive was money, and it grew stronger while enrolled at the University of Santa Clara.
Dana represented to his classmates that he was the owner of the airline company that his father owned. And in fact, he did an interview with the school newspaper in which there was an article that was written where he claims to be the owner of the dealership.
He presented himself as accomplishing all these things that actually his dad had done. He owned an airline company, he saved a lot of jobs, he was really wealthy.
Dana's success story gets back to his parents.
Somebody asked Glee about the article, and she said, well, Dale, he'll handle it. To be candid, it is a strictly conjecture. I think that was the beginning of the end, because Dale was the type of man who was good at his word, truth, basically belief in people.
We thought that maybe Dale had seen this and said, okay, when school's done, you're cut off. You know, if you're that good, and you can go in here and profess my story to be your own, we'll see how you do.
Dale wouldn't have not put up with that, because that would have absolutely destroyed him, to have his son lie like that.
5 months later, Dale, his wife, and daughter are found murdered. The defense's case is simple.
The defense's main argument was that we have the wrong guys and that the crime scene investigators must have missed something. They missed that clue that would have led us down the right direction.
The defense really tried to make Jack Ponce look like a liar and being more involved and maybe being the person who actually committed the murders.
Neither defendant takes the stand.
If Dana Ewell took the stand, we would have crushed him.
Dana had a lot of explaining to do. There was a lot of ammunition to hurt him, but I don't think he could have stood up to it. He was just a boy.
One of Dana's friends testifies about a visit made to the Ewell house shortly after the murders.
He goes into the house, and Dana's pointing out all these bullet holes in the walls and stuff, and also points out the brain matter and blood still on the wall.
Dana Ewell lived in that house for approximately a month before the cleanup crew arrived to remove that gray matter from the wall.
I'm watching the jurors, and all 12 heads moved at the same unison time, from looking at the witness to looking at Dana. And the look on their face like, you've got to be me.
After a 5-week trial, the jury returns a verdict of guilty on all counts. Dana and Joel are both sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms.
Dana was the epitome of evil.
I had mixed reactions to the guilty verdict. Some satisfaction that the person who killed them had been convicted, and also some sorrow, some sadness over the tragedy of this entire family being wiped out, if you will, 3 by murder, 1 by the prosecution of that murder.
The fact that somebody you love, somebody you gave life to, that you've nurtured all these years, thinks of you as nothing more than an impediment to riches. I don't know if you can ever come to grips with something like that.
I guess that's been one of the big question marks that everybody's raised and nobody's been able to answer. Why do kids turn out to be that way? I have no answer.
I remember Joel looking down and I think realizing what the rest of his life was going to be like.
Joel Radovich is now housed in California's Mule Creek State Prison. In 2005, the Supreme Court denied review of Dana's case. Today, Dana Ewell sits inside the secure housing unit at Corcoran State Prison, alongside Charles Manson and Sirhan Sirhan.
I hear it's not the easiest place for him, but he deserves it.
It changed my life forever. It was I couldn't believe the sadness that I felt for that such evil could exist in people. I mean, it's things of fiction. And I couldn't believe it could happen to our family.